Today on Community Watch, we will be talking with a representative from an organization called Civic Influencers. Very important in this election year in Georgia. You don't want to miss this show, and Community Watch starts now. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Community Watch. I am solo today because Greg is traveling on business. I'm sure we'll be hearing about the details soon. But I know one thing: he is going to regret missing the show today because we have a very special guest talking about an organization that I think will interest many of you. And that organization is Civic Influencers. And our guest is Mr. Cornell Duckworth. So, Mr. Duckworth, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me on the show. I really do appreciate you taking the time out and reaching out and allowing me to be on this platform. So thank you so much.
Well, we're happy to have you. And I have to say, although it's not unusual for me to be unaware of many great organizations out there, and I know there are many, I was surprised when I checked out the Civic Influencers website because at least the website gives the impression that this is a pretty big organization that's really having an impact across the country. So tell me a little bit about the organization, Civic Influencers.
Yeah, absolutely. First off, we are a growing organization. We are getting influencers from all across the country. And basically what Civic Influencers is a national nonpartisan organization whose mission is to increase youth civic power and youth voting, giving emphasis to Black, Indigenous, and youth of color. By doing so, we have a paid semester-long leadership and mentoring program for young people to get tools and learn methods that can use to support their communities and also amp up their civic voice. So also we use ongoing research, innovation, and evidence-based voter engagement racial justice strategies, including organizing and advocacy and education for youth, Indigenous, Black, Hispanic, disabled, and LGBTQIA youth for a more equitable and inclusive democracy.
Well, let me back up on some of that and see if we can explore that a little bit more. I noticed that the organization has existed since 2008. Is that right?
Yep.
And I understand that you, at least, I don't believe you have been with the organization since the beginning, more recently.
Actually, very recently. I actually started in February with Civic Influencers. So
all right.
Yeah.
Well,
still in that new stage.
Well, that's all right. That's great. Do you, I guess what I'm asking is, what were the specific motivations out there that caused the group of people who started the organization to say, this is something that is really needed, that really needs to exist? If you understand what I'm asking.
Yeah, absolutely. So here, I'll speak more specifically here in the state of Georgia, because it kind of complements all of the states because we are a national organization. Here in the state of Georgia, we've seen time to time that we have seen politicians that sometimes don't have the best interest in our youth, people of color, or any marginalized community, and they are actively making laws that prevent people to basically live their lives. So the need for civic influencers was to first make sure that we encourage and keep that momentum of getting youth, the youth to be able to actively civically outreach or civically engage in their own communities. And then secondly, it was to promote the equitable democracy as well too. So it was definitely a high need for an organization like this to encourage people that we are working with, which is individuals that are 18 to 29 years old. For example, I do want to get, I'm pretty sure I'm going ahead of myself, but just throwing out a few activities and things that we really do when it comes to the boots on the ground, what our civic influencers have been doing here in the state of Georgia. We have one of my civic influencers who is a Morehouse College student is fighting for making election day a holiday for their campus. So that means that they won't have to attend classes during election day. I have another civic influencer that is out canvassing and doing voter registration, who actually did a panel with the NAACP. So with that being said, our civic influencers are not just diverse, they bring so much uniqueness to the table, but they're very motivated. They are out there, they're putting the boots on the ground, and they're committed to making a positive change in our democracy.
And I gather then that you are particularly focused on this work in Georgia.
Yes, absolutely. So my actual position is statewide organizer of the state of Georgia. I'm a part of a team that is other statewide organizers in different states as well too. So we cover North Carolina, Florida, Ohio, Michigan, Nevada, Texas. And my role is to be a coach and give advice and be a support system for our interns or our fellows. So basically, I'm an organizers for organizers.
Okay, all right. Well, that actually is that's helpful. That's helpful. So I guess one thing, and I do want to talk more about your efforts in Georgia, so we'll get to that. But one thing that's, I guess, surprised me was the scope of the organization and how many individuals on the website are involved in working with the organization, supporting the organization. This is a pretty big thing. Is it? And I noticed. I know it's a 501c3. Is it run primarily by donations?
So we do have a big donor base. For example, we actually have a town hall meeting coming up on Thursday in which we talking to some stakeholders that does take a part of helping us funding. But I'm not sure if our funding is, and I want to be very accurate when I say this, like I'm not sure if our funding comes to 100% from our donations.
Because and I know Greg would be saying this because he more so than I have worked with 501c3s for years, and it's always a struggle. It's always a struggle. So I was just impressed with the size and scope of civic influencers and all of the different things that I saw through the website that the organization is involved in, not specifically in Georgia, but all over.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this it was really quite impressive. So I know that it's an important election year in Georgia. In fact, we are taping this the day before the primary election day, and likely will not be aired until after that day is passed. But I know right now is a very busy time for you, but I'm guessing the months leading up to this day have kept you pretty busy as well.
Wow. So I started in February, and soon when I started, it was 110% boots on the ground every month. So especially with our civic influencers here in the state of Georgia, and we do know that this is a very important primary and election in general. Our civic influencers here has been phenomenal in getting out the vote and making sure that they are keeping people of our millennials and Gen Zs and young people, giving them the proper knowledge of how to vote and the importance of voting as well too. So as me, as a state organizer, it's been very, very busy as being that support system and making sure that they have the necessary tools and resources needed for them to be successful.
Well, I'm curious, having just stepped into this role in February and being dropped, kind of, as you say, into a speeding Maserati, where do you begin to learn the state and reach out? I mean,
Yeah.
How do you, it's such a big task. I just wonder how you begin.
Well, I will say this is not my first rodeo in community activism and outreach, especially here in Georgia. So when I was actually brought upon two civic influencers, the reason why we have become so successful here in Georgia, or building up to be as successful as possible in regards to recruitment and making sure that our civic influencers have the resources needed, is because half of my approach was using contacts that I already knew from previous organizations that I have been affiliated with or worked for as well too. So it wasn't, for me, when it comes to civic influencer, it wasn't boots on the ground, but I don't have any resources or don't know what to do. It was like I already had a plan even before I was hired to be a part of influencers. So.
Yeah. Which I'm sure is one reason you were hired. Is
right.
That's great. That's great. We only have a couple of minutes before our break, so I don't know if we have enough time for you to fully answer this, but we can continue it after the break if necessary. As someone who works for a college and deals with students in the age group that you are working with, it's not uncommon for me to come across the sense from students that participation has no value, that voting won't change anything. How do you address that? Because I'm sure you're familiar with that attitude as well.
Absolutely. I definitely want to there's two parts to that question, actually. So the first part is that that is definitely a thing. We do that is a challenge when it comes to working with youth in general. I'm myself in the same age group. I'm in my 20s as well too. So I do understand the frustration. I do understand why certain people think that voting isn't important. I do understand that, and I take that wholeheartedly, and I'm very empathetic about that. I put myself in other people's shoes because I'm a part of this community as well too, this generation as well too. Now going into what do I do to combat that, I can get into that the next part of the interview.
All right, because we are coming up on our break. Let me reintroduce you though. We're talking to Cornell Duckworth, who works with an organization called Civic Influencers. And so we're talking about the election and all of the things that Mr. Duckworth is up to with that group. We're going to take a quick break here, but we'll be back with a lot more. Do not go away.
I know you've had your moments of doubt and struggle, and I'm here to say I'm proud of you.
And although each one of us may take a different path, may we look back upon today as the moment we stepped into a larger world, a greater world.
You will pass this way but once. Do it right. If ever there was a time to follow your passion and do something that matters to you, now is certainly that time.
Welcome back to Community Watch. We're having a conversation with Mr. Cornell Duckworth, who works for Civic Influencers, which is a nonprofit organization that attempts to engage young people in voting and civic activism. And I know that's a very brief shorthand for your lengthy and ambitious mission, but maybe it'll get the point across. All right, so you were in the middle of when we went to break, you were in the middle of talking a little bit about young people's sense that voting has no real value, and how you try to address that when you talk to young people.
Yeah, absolutely. So just going back prior to the break, I was explaining that I do understand the frustration of young people and why they believe that the importance of there isn't any significance or importance of voting. However, what really brings me to this work is that I know for a fact, as myself, as a millennial, as a 20-something-year-old, that I know the importance of how voting impacts people's lives significantly. So with that being said, some ways that I combat that or challenge that opposition, I should say, is by giving the knowledge of why voting is important. So with that being said, a lot of people think, or a lot of people that really don't know why voting is important, or they feel that it isn't, they think that just because the presidential election, and they think that the presidential election is the only election that is happening. But a lot of people don't understand, which attracts me to this work to give them the resources and the tools, is that we have state elections and local elections that we have officials that if you vote for them, they're the ones that will fix that pothole that you have been running over and having to pay $100 or $200 to get your tire fixed or whatnot. You have politicians on a state level and local level that cares about healthcare, that cares that, hey, well, if you're making a certain amount of money or you're not making a certain amount of money, that shouldn't stop you from going to the hospital and spending a lot of money on your own health. You have people that are fighting for higher minimum wage. You have people that are fighting and advocating for LGBTQIA rights, or you have people that wants everyone to succeed. And once again, going back to one of our missions, is that we want to have an equitable democracy. So a lot of people don't understand that. They think that just because there's a presidential election, that's the only election that's happening. But we do have local and state elections that really do affect us on a personal and more intimate level. So given that type of not information, but given that type of going into a situation where I do have the opposition and having that approach, it usually gives a lot of people some insight of why voting is important. If that makes sense.
Because it's certainly true that especially with local elections, with city commissioners, say, or county commissioners, perhaps mayor elections, sometimes you see the impacts of those votes much more every day than you do the larger elections that are nationwide. You can certainly see impacts to your community that you might not with a larger election. If we have time, I want to come back to some other things, but I want to make sure that we have time for you to talk about the fellowship that Civic Influencers has available. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, just to give some logistics of the actual program itself. Once again, we're looking for individuals that are between the ages of 18 and 29. And that doesn't mean that they have to attend a college or anything like that. We are looking for anyone between those ages that are committed to civic engagement, that wants to make a change, that cares about their own their communities. And we welcome all, and we really appreciate. We have actually a lot of community members, of fellowship fellows that aren't in college right now. So we really want everyone. We're very inclusive when it comes to that in general. So we have terms, which we have summer terms, and we have our fall terms and spring terms as well. Our spring term actually ends on this Friday on the 27th. So we're wrapping up that term. And then our next term, which is summer, starts next week, and we're prepping for orientation. It is a paid internship or a paid fellowship. And the way that our fellows operate is that they bring to us 3 activities in regards to civic engagement. And for example, one of those activities I mentioned earlier, our Morehouse student, he actually fought to make election day a holiday for their campus, which is considered an activity as well too. Also, we have a lot of resources in regards to voter engagement that we provide to our civic influencers as well too. So once again, as me being the statewide organizer here for Georgia, we are that support system for them if needed to be. I think other than that, yeah, that should cover our fellowship program.
Well, let me ask a few questions about it. The 3 activities that your fellows have, do they come up with those themselves?
Absolutely. So this one thing that's really unique about Civic Influencers that I really love is that we allow for our fellowship or fellows to have the autonomy to bring to the table. We have we just hired a civic influencer that's in the medical field, and one of the questions during her interview was, "What are some issues that that you want to combat?" And she was mentioning how diabetes and high cholesterol and health issues really affect Black men, and she wants to do a panel in regards to bring a few politicians that will talk about that and have some type of conversation around that particular topic. So going back, we are very unique in regards to who we bring onto the table. They come up with these activities 100% on their own, but that doesn't also mean that if they don't have, if they're struggling with coming up with activities, that's where I come in as the support system, and just give them that push or give them that nudge to be able to be successful as possible.
So for individuals that have always wanted to make a difference in their communities, you are really providing the forum and the support to actually do that.
Absolutely. And you couldn't have said it any better. That's literally what, as a civic influencer, as the organization itself, that is what we're doing. For those that are interested in being a community organizer and making change in their communities, we are the platform to just give you the resources and the tools to do so.
So it's really a huge opportunity. And I can't tell you over the years how many students at Georgia Highlands that have talked about wanting to make a difference, but really didn't have the means or the direction or the support to really move forward. And so what you are offering, what Civic Influencers is offering, is that means to accomplish that.
Absolutely. And once again, you can't say it any better. We are that means and that opportunity for students who want to get civically engaged in their communities to do so. Yep.
So the activities are actually developed. I mean, they could come into the application with ideas, but the 3 activities aren't really decided upon until after they're selected.
Actually, that's not the case at all.
Okay.
They already have. If you already come in knowing if you want to get involved in your community and want to help out or be civically engaged, whatever that looks like for that particular civic influencer is what that looks like. And you just incorporate whatever your passion is about, the issues that you want to combat into the activities that, the activities that you will be offering to with for civic influencers.
Well, let's go ahead and get some contact information, because I think a lot of folks will want to reach out to ask more.
Absolutely. So once again, my name is Cornell Duckworth. I am the statewide organizer for Georgia. My email is cornell@civicinfluencers.org. We also are really big on social media. So we have Instagram, TikTok, and we have a TikTok, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, and Facebook at Civic Influencers. We highly encourage those that are watching to check out our website, our content. We have our Civic Influencers that you will actually really see the work that has been put in across the country, not just the state of Georgia. Like the work that our Civic Influencers have put in is all shown on our social medias. So once again, our social medias for Instagram, Twitter, TikTok is at Civic Influencers. I also want highly encourage whoever is interested to apply by going to www.civicinfluencers.org. There you will be able to find our application, and our application is a really short process. And once you apply, I'll be in contact with you soon.
So a lot of places to look. I have to, a lot of the social media, I'm just way too old to deal with. But as I said earlier, the website is just jam-packed with information. So
yeah.
All right. So once again, your address is cornell@civicinfluencers.org.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And Cornell is Cornell. Is that right?
Yeah. Like the university.
Okay. Well, the election year, I'm wondering if one of the missions of Civic Influencers will be to try to get young people to vote. Now the primaries are already happening, but there's still time to engage in the general election, which will be in the fall.
Right.
So is that something that the organization deals with as well?
Yeah. So once again, Georgia is we have a very, very busy year, a very busy year. We have a very important election, our gubernatorial race, and we as staff on Civic Influencers are heavily focused on making sure that I am successful, so our fellows will be successful as well too. So we're definitely heavily focused on this upcoming race that's coming up in November, and making sure that we have the necessary tools so everyone can be successful in getting the vote out.
That's great. Well, we're about out of time. Mr. Duckworth, thank you so much for being with us. I want to remind especially young people who are watching, or if family members want to pass this along, to email Mr. Duckworth at cornell@civicinfluencers.org, or check out the civicinfluencers.org website for more information. And thank you for what you're doing, and thank you for being on the show with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
And we'll see all of you next time on Community Watch.